And I don't even care if anyone calls me a Sally, because I'm a snail and I'm never gonna fail. And you know what? You're gonna have to bail me out of jail.
Legendary filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife faced a moment so shocking, it shattered the peace of their own home. The very place that should have been their safe zone turned into the center of something no one saw coming. And the twist? It involved someone they knew, someone they trusted, flipping their entire world upside down. Rob, who built a lifetime crafting touching stories about love, family, and connection, suddenly found his real life tangled in heartbreak. His son, Nick Reiner, had been open about his long battle with personal struggles, and the family had already been through storms because of it. But no one, absolutely no one, could have imagined how wild things would get the night before everything fell apart. Now, investigators are taking a fresh look at old statements Nick once made about his father, remarks that hint there were warning signs long before things spun out of control. The devastating incident involving Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, unfolded on December 13, 2025, a night that was supposed to be full of joy, laughter, and holiday cheer. That evening, the couple showed up at a Christmas party hosted by none other than Conan O'Brien. The vibe was bright, festive, and full of familiar faces, industry friends, colleagues, everyone ready to celebrate. But behind the cheerful music and the sparkle of the night, something was off. Witnesses later revealed that a heated argument suddenly erupted between Rob and Nick, grabbing everyone's attention in an instant. This wasn't just a small disagreement, it was explosive. Voices were raised, emotions ran high, and the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Guests started glancing around nervously as the argument grew louder, echoing through the room. Several people later described Nick's behavior as unnerving, saying his actions that night stood out in a way no one could forget. Something about his energy just didn't feel right. By the next morning, one guest told investigators that Nick had everyone completely on edge. That phrase quickly spread like wildfire as detectives began piecing together what really happened in those crucial hours before everything took a dark turn. Rob didn't back down. He faced the situation head-on, trying to keep things calm and under control. Michelle stood right by his side through it all, steady and loyal, refusing to let things blow up any further. When the couple finally decided to leave the party, it didn't look dramatic or rushed. It looked intentional, like they wanted to quietly pull Nick away from the public eye and handle the situation in private. To those watching, it was clear. They were trying to protect their family, even as everything around them felt ready to explode. It looked like two loving parents doing everything they could to protect their family, trying to keep control of a moment slipping through their fingers fast. Later that same night, Rob got on the phone with Eric Idle, and the mood was completely different. The two were chatting about creative plans, laughing, and talking about the long-awaited Spinal Tap 2 project like nothing was wrong. According to Eric, the conversation was chill, full of ideas and excitement, not a hint of personal trouble in sight. He said Rob sounded energized, upbeat, and ready for what was next. No sign of stress, no hint of fear, just pure focus on the work ahead. But behind those calm moments, Rob had privately shared something haunting with a few close friends, and now, in hindsight, it feels downright chilling. He had admitted he was afraid of his own son. That wasn't something Rob Reiner would ever say lightly. It came from real fear, not frustration, not anger, just that deep, helpless kind of fear only a parent can feel when someone they love starts to spiral. He was watching behavior he didn't understand and couldn't control, and that quiet worry would soon turn into something much darker once they returned home that night. In the early morning hours of December 14th, tragedy struck inside the Reiners' Brentwood home. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office later confirmed that the heartbreaking event happened sometime before sunrise, though the exact time couldn't be pinned down. Still, the timeline painted a clear enough picture. By around 3 p.m., their daughter Romy Reiner, who lived right across the street, grew worried when she couldn't reach them. When Romy stepped inside her parents' house, the air felt wrong, too still, too quiet. Within seconds, she realized something was terribly off and called for help immediately. Paramedics and LAPD officers rushed to the scene. Within minutes, the unthinkable truth came out. Both Rob and Michelle Reiner were found unresponsive. The news hit the entire neighborhood like a punch to the gut. Authorities instantly locked down the property, launching a full-scale investigation. Detectives treated it as a major domestic case from the very start, but what they found inside stopped everyone cold. There were no signs of forced entry. Every door, every window, perfectly intact. Nothing broken, nothing out of place. That single detail changed everything. It suggested that whoever was involved didn't break in. They were already inside, or maybe even let in willingly. As investigators dug deeper, neighbors were questioned one by one, but the answers only made things more mysterious. Nobody heard a thing. No shouting, no glass breaking, no alarms, nothing. The silence surrounding the Reiner home made the entire situation even creepier. In a quiet Brentwood neighborhood where every sound carries and every house is wired with top-tier security, the total stillness that night stood out like a giant red flag. Everyone was left shaken, asking the same haunting question: what really happened behind those silent walls? Investigators quickly realized that whoever moved through the Reiners' home that night knew it like the back of their hand. Every single step looked precise. No broken furniture, no loud crashes, just a chilling kind of silence that only someone truly familiar with the place could pull off. It wasn't random or chaotic. It was controlled, almost rehearsed. As detectives worked through the timeline, every lead started pointing in one direction: Nick Reiner. According to police reports, Nick left the house not long after the tragic event. Around 4 a.m. on December 14th, he was seen checking into the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica. Staff members later told police that nothing about his behavior raised any red flags. He came in calm, polite, totally composed. He checked in like any regular guest, didn't look tired or shaken, and spoke clearly, like everything was perfectly normal. He didn't stumble over his words or act nervous. No panic, no confusion, nothing. But later, when investigators searched that same hotel room after he checked out, they found something that changed everything. Hidden evidence, items that reportedly linked him directly to the tragedy at the Reiner home, was discovered inside. That single discovery tied his hotel stay straight back to the Brentwood scene, putting Nick squarely in the middle of the investigation's timeline. Even more unsettling, his stay at the hotel was short, just a few hours. He checked in, stayed briefly, and then disappeared again, moving quickly like someone trying not to leave a trail. By midday, he was already gone, his movements precise and quiet, just like what detectives believed had happened inside the house. Later that same day, surveillance footage picked him up again, this time at a gas station near Exposition Boulevard and Vermont Avenue. The video showed him walking in casually, grabbing a drink, paying at the counter, and walking right back out. His body language, cool and steady. No rush, no hesitation, no trace of fear. He didn't look like someone running from anything. He looked like someone who had all the time in the world. That calmness, too calm, made investigators uneasy. It clashed sharply with what they already believed had gone down hours earlier in Brentwood. By 9:15 p.m. that night, police had finally zeroed in on his location, near Exposition Park, just steps from the University of Southern California campus. What happened next was tense but controlled. Patrol cars swarmed the area, sirens cutting through the night, lights flashing across the streets. Witnesses said it felt like a movie scene unfolding right in front of them. But Nick didn't run. He didn't fight. He stayed completely silent, doing exactly what officers told him to do. Within minutes, he was taken into custody. No resistance, no struggle. Just quiet compliance that left everyone watching even more unsettled. By the end of that night, detectives started piecing everything together. A heated argument at a holiday party, a chillingly quiet house with no signs of forced entry, a quick disappearance, a strange trail through Los Angeles, and finally, an arrest that raised more questions than it answered. That's when everything took a darker, more twisted turn. Once the Brentwood home was fully secured, the forensic team moved in, ready to uncover what had really gone down behind those quiet, locked doors. They combed through every inch of the property, methodically searching for any clue that could fill in the blanks left by witnesses and neighbors who couldn't piece it all together. Nothing was too small to check. Every smudge, every marking, every trace told a part of the story. The medical examiner then stepped in to perform the critical time-of-event analysis. With no cameras inside the home and no reliable timestamps to lean on, investigators had to depend entirely on science. Temperature readings, subtle physical indicators, even the tiniest trace of disturbance, all became key pieces of the puzzle. The question driving everyone was brutally simple, yet deeply haunting. When did Rob and Michelle Reiner lose their lives? And how exactly did it happen? Forensic experts turned to the body's own biological timeline. Rigor mortis and lividity. Rigor mortis happens when the body's muscles stiffen after death. while lividity reveals where the blood has settled once the heart stops beating. These details might sound clinical, but together they can pinpoint the moment life stopped with eerie precision. Based on those findings, the medical examiner concluded that Rob and Michelle Reiner had likely passed away during the early morning hours, roughly 12 hours before they were found. That discovery aligned perfectly with what detectives had already suspected. The tragedy unfolded deep in the night, during the quietest stretch, when nearly everyone in the neighborhood was sound asleep and completely unaware of the horror taking place just a few houses away. Next, investigators shifted focus to the physical evidence, the injuries themselves. Forensic specialists described what they found as multiple sharp force injuries, a technical term for wounds caused by a sharp-edged object, likely something like a knife. And these weren't distant attacks. They were up close, face-to-face, and personal. Whoever did this was right there, within arm's reach. It wasn't a strike-and-run situation. It took direct contact and deliberate movement. What shocked investigators the most wasn't just the type of wounds, it was their repetition. The evidence suggested that the attack didn't end quickly. It went on longer than anyone wanted to imagine, showing an intensity that even seasoned forensic experts found hard to process. The findings painted a disturbing picture of that night inside the peaceful Brentwood home. This wasn't one single motion. It was sustained, relentless, and deliberate. From a forensic standpoint, that kind of repetition doesn't point to a sudden outburst. It suggests a decision, a choice to continue when there was every chance to stop. Investigators didn't jump to emotional conclusions. They looked strictly at what the evidence meant in legal terms. And legally, that kind of sustained action screamed intent. The science spoke clearly. The person responsible had made a conscious decision to keep going instead of walking away. Following these powerful forensic conclusions, Nick Reiner was officially charged with 2 counts of first-degree homicide, 1 for each parent. In California, that's the most severe charge possible, reserved for cases where prosecutors believe the act was intentional and possibly even premeditated. Prosecutors hit the case with special circumstances since it involved more than one victim. And under California law, that label changes everything. It instantly elevates the charges to the highest legal level possible. And this isn't just some technical phrase. It transforms the entire course of the trial. Once that classification is attached, the stakes skyrocket, and the potential penalties become the harshest that the justice system allows. If convicted, Nick Reiner could face life in prison without parole, or even capital punishment, depending on how the court decides to move forward. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office made it clear in their official statement. This was the most serious charge available under California law. They weren't holding anything back. Their message was bold and direct. They had full confidence in the forensic evidence, and they believed every piece of proof met the strict legal threshold for such a devastating accusation. The case had officially shifted from a heartbreaking family tragedy into one of the most high-profile courtroom battles Los Angeles had seen in years. Investigators had pulled everything together: a clear timeline, a verified cause of death, proof of sustained close contact, and no sign of forced entry. Add in Nick's movements afterward, and the picture forming was impossible to ignore. Now, it was time for those findings to be tested under the cold, bright lights of the courtroom, where every detail would finally come to light. When Nick Reiner faced a judge for the very first time, the moment was electric. The setting was strict and sterile, the kind of silence that presses down on your chest. Even the plain outfit he wore added to the tension, sending chills through everyone watching. This wasn't just another procedural hearing. It was a turning point in a story already wrapped in heartbreak and disbelief. On the morning of December 17, 2025, Nick Reiner was led into a Los Angeles courtroom for his initial appearance. Up until then, the case had only existed on paper, in police files, charging documents, and official statements. But now, it was stepping into the public arena. From that moment forward, every word spoken and every move made inside that courtroom became part of the official record. Security was locked down tight. No cameras, no live feeds, no TV coverage, not a single lens allowed to capture what was happening. The court made sure of it. Only a handful of reporters, attorneys, and officials were permitted inside to witness it firsthand, and even they had to follow strict restrictions that had been set long before Nick entered the room. Then, the doors opened. Nick Reiner walked in, flanked by sheriff's deputies, their presence heavy and deliberate as they guided him straight to the defense table. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The room fell completely silent. Every shuffle, every glance, every faint sound seemed to echo louder than it should. People didn't even whisper. The air was thick with tension. That first appearance didn't just begin a trial. It transformed the mystery of Brentwood into a full-blown courtroom drama. The once quiet whispers of what might have happened inside that home now turned into a public legal storm, and all eyes were on the man standing at the center of it. As Nick Reiner stood before the judge, everyone in the courtroom noticed something striking about his appearance. He was wearing a harm prevention smock. That's the type of garment given to individuals under special watch during serious custody situations. A visible signal that the person wearing it is being closely monitored for safety. The sight of it caught attention instantly. The dull, heavy fabric stood out under the courtroom lights, silently hinting at what might have been happening behind the scenes. The judge didn't say a word. The attorneys didn't mention it. The hearing rolled on as if that smock didn't exist at all. Once the session officially started, the entire courtroom sank into silence. You could practically hear people breathing. When the clerk began reading out the charges, the words echoed through the room like a slow, heavy drumbeat. 2 counts of first-degree homicide. One for his father, the other for his mother. The charges were read in that cold, emotionless tone only courts can manage. No feelings, no storytelling, just pure legal weight. Every word hit like a hammer. When the judge finally asked if he understood his rights, Nick gave a short, calm answer. Yes, he did. That single reply was the only time he spoke the entire session. No questions, no protests, no emotion, just quiet focus. Staring straight ahead like he was locked somewhere far away in his own thoughts. He didn't enter a plea, didn't look confused, and didn't flinch at the words being read against him. He just sat there, steady and expressionless, while the courtroom watched in stunned silence. After the charges were formally entered into record, the discussion turned to scheduling. Nick's defense attorney requested a delay in the arraignment, buying extra time before an official plea would need to be made. The judge agreed right away, setting the next court date for January 7th, 2026. The prosecution didn't object. No outbursts, no surprises, just calm, deliberate procedure. But underneath that quiet, everyone in the room felt the weight of what was unfolding. The trial hadn't even started, yet the tension was already thick enough to cut through. Then, in a hushed whisper that spread across the courtroom, people realized who was standing beside Nick Reiner. His defense attorney was none other than Alan Jackson. That name alone sent a ripple through the crowd. Jackson isn't just any lawyer. He's a courtroom titan known for handling high-profile, high-pressure cases that attract massive media attention. Over the years, Jackson has represented some of the most headline-dominating names in Hollywood. Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, and Karen Reed, among others. So when Nick walked in with Alan Jackson at his side, it sent a message louder than any statement could. This wasn't a last-minute lawyer or some random public defender. This was a strategic move. The Reiner defense team was clearly gearing up for a long, brutal legal war. It signaled they expected everything to be examined. Every photo, every text, every scrap of evidence, and they were ready to fight every single inch of it. Legal insiders watching that morning knew exactly what it meant. This case was about to become one of the most fiercely contested trials Los Angeles had seen in years. As the session came to a close, Nick was quietly escorted out of the courtroom the same way he came in, flanked by deputies, head down, no emotion, no eye contact with the press. No words came from the prosecution, no sound bites from the defense. Just a low wave of murmurs as reporters scrambled to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Within minutes, the courtroom was empty again, silent and still, as if nothing had happened. But outside those walls, the buzz was immediate. By that afternoon, the entire city was talking, not about the evidence or the hearing itself, but about one burning question: who was funding Nick Reiner's powerhouse legal defense? Whispers spread fast through legal circles. A double first-degree homicide case with special circumstances isn't just intense, it's enormously expensive. Insiders knew the truth. A battle like this could drag on for years, costing millions before it was over. Whatever was coming next, one thing was clear. This was no simple trial. This was a full-scale war set to unfold in front of the world's eyes. Cases like this burn through money fast. Expert witnesses, deep forensic reviews, endless pre-trial motions. It all adds up, and quick, before a single juror is even seated. The costs can climb into the millions. That's why the financial mystery behind Nick Reiner's defense instantly became the latest shocking twist in this already wild saga. Legal analysts started crunching numbers, and the estimates were jaw-dropping. Mounting a defense of this level, complete with forensic specialists, top-tier consultants, and a heavyweight attorney like Alan Jackson, could easily top $1 million, and that's before the trial date was even set. But here's where things got murky. Nick Reiner didn't have any visible source of income. No steady career, no projects, no recent film or book deals. Nothing that could explain how such an enormous bill was being paid. That gap in the story lit up the media overnight. Reporters, insiders, and online commentators jumped in fast, each with their own theory. Some whispered that the Reiner family estate might be covering the costs behind closed doors. Others questioned if that was even legal, especially in a case where the accused was directly connected to the victims whose assets were potentially being used. Estate law experts wasted no time breaking it down for the public. They explained that it's a complicated gray area. Sometimes, under certain conditions, shared or inherited assets can be used to fund legal defenses. But in other cases, it can spark major disputes or even court battles between family members who object. Every scenario depends on how the estate is structured, who has access, and what conditions were put in place before everything fell apart. Inside the actual courtroom, though, none of this came up. The judge didn't ask a single question about where the money was coming from, and the defense team didn't offer any details either. They kept everything locked down tight, no explanations, no hints, nothing for the record. But outside those courthouse walls, the conversation exploded. The story spread across news outlets, podcasts, and social media feeds like wildfire. People everywhere were debating who was really paying for Nick's million-dollar defense. And even more divisive, should they be? Some argued that no matter the crime, everyone deserves strong legal representation, especially when the stakes are this high. But others found the idea deeply unsettling. The thought that family-linked funds could be protecting the very person accused of destroying that same family? Inside the courtroom, everything stayed calm and procedural. Cold, steady, almost mechanical. But outside those walls, emotions were flaring up fast. Reporters swarmed the steps, public debate raged across social media, and even within the Reiner family, things felt far from settled. Sources close to the situation claimed that not everyone in the family wanted to see pure punishment. Some surviving relatives, still reeling from the tragedy, reportedly hoped Nick would get mental health treatment alongside the criminal proceedings. They weren't trying to excuse what happened, but they wanted the court to see the full picture, not just the crime itself. To them, it wasn't just about vengeance. It was about understanding what broke inside him in the first place. The entire situation had moved beyond legal definitions and evidence charts. It was tangled up in something deeper: family morality, heartbreak, and the question of what justice should really mean. Still, none of these emotional reports were officially confirmed. No verified statements, no filings, nothing concrete in writing. Just whispers and speculation floating through the media. Meanwhile, from the prosecution's perspective, their stance never shifted an inch. They stood firm. The evidence spoke for itself. Prosecutors emphasized that the details of what happened, along with Nick's behavior in the hours that followed, clearly met the standard for first-degree homicide. They pointed to the brutality, the timing, and the lack of remorse, saying these elements made the charges undeniable. Because the case carried special circumstances involving more than one victim, the sentencing options were already locked in. There were no lighter outcomes, no plea deals on the table. If convicted, Nick Reiner faced only two possible fates: life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Nothing in between. It was as serious as California law could get, and everyone involved knew it. Still, the story wasn't slowing down. Not for a second. While the courtroom stayed composed, the world outside buzzed with new rumors, new leaks, and endless theories. Detectives were quietly piecing together additional evidence, attorneys were crafting strategy behind closed doors, and information that hadn't reached the press was circulating among a very small circle of insiders. Everyone knew the next chapter was about to get even heavier. Inside the courthouse, silence reigned. But beneath that silence, tension was boiling. And soon it became clear that Nick Reiner wouldn't stay silent forever. In the days that followed, all attention shifted toward a statement, something Nick had said once before, but this time, it landed with a whole new weight. His words cracked open the case in a different way, shaking the public's view and throwing everything back into question. This became what many began calling Nick's shocking revelation. In that statement, Nick Reiner opened up about his early years, revealing that he never really felt close to his father, Rob Reiner. That emotional distance, he said, shaped his entire identity. He described watching his family laugh and connect while he stood on the edge, unsure how to join in. "It always felt like I was looking in from the outside," he once admitted. By all accounts, Rob Reiner was the kind of father most would call devoted, present, successful, and always trying to stay connected to his family. He shared real bonds with his other kids through sports, routines, and creative projects that built deep, lasting memories. But for Nick, those same spaces never quite clicked. Even though their home looked stable and full of love from the outside, inside, Nick felt something different, like he was living next to his family instead of with them. It wasn't that Rob ignored him. If anything, he tried to give Nick everything he possibly could. But success and constant work can sometimes build emotional walls without anyone meaning to. Rob was busy building worlds on screen, while Nick was quietly slipping away from the one at home. He grew up surrounded by love, yet somehow, that love didn't always reach him in a way he could feel. What filled that gap instead was a quiet kind of loneliness that grew louder as he got older. As that emotional distance deepened, Nick began to pull further away. He stopped finding comfort at home and started chasing belonging somewhere else, among people and places that offered freedom instead of rules, thrill instead of guidance. That's when the substance use began. What started off as small experimentation soon spiraled into something darker, a serious dependency that took over fast. By the time he was just 15 years old, Nick's struggle had become impossible to ignore. His family didn't turn a blind eye, they jumped into action. Rob and Michelle sought help immediately, getting Nick into rehabilitation programs again and again. This wasn't a hidden secret. It was an open, painful fight to pull him back from the edge. They weren't ashamed. They were desperate to save him from something that already had a grip on his life. Later, Nick would openly admit that the substances he used were powerful and dangerous, leaving him locked in a brutal uphill battle for years. His addiction became a cycle everyone close to him knew too well. Moments of hope and healing followed by devastating relapses that tore it all apart again. Each time he climbed back up, the fall hit harder. During those dark periods, Nick's life grew unstable. He drifted, Maine, New Jersey, Texas, bouncing between places with no steady home or structure. These weren't new beginnings. They were survival stretches filled with uncertainty and chaos. But through all of it, Rob and Michelle Reiner never walked away. They stayed close, no matter how hard it got. They talked openly in interviews about their son's battle, never pointing fingers or hiding the truth. They refused to play the blame game. Instead, they took responsibility, showing compassion even when things were breaking apart. They poured everything they had into helping Nick heal. Money, time, love, energy. Funding treatment programs, paying for recovery centers, and showing up every single time he fell. Friends close to the family said the Reiners' efforts never stopped, even when everyone else thought there was no hope left. Rob, always the storyteller, eventually tried a new approach, a way to reach Nick not through lectures or therapy, but through creativity. In 2015, Rob and Nick joined forces on a deeply personal film called Being Charlie, a raw and emotional story inspired directly by Nick's real-life struggle with addiction and recovery. It was more than just a movie. It was a father's attempt to understand his son and a son's chance to tell his truth on screen. That collaboration was supposed to be healing, a shared project meant to bridge years of silence and pain. For a while, it even seemed to work. But behind the scenes, the wounds that film explored weren't just fiction. They were the real scars of a family still trying to hold itself together. The film Being. Charlie didn't hide behind Hollywood gloss or easy endings. It went straight for the truth. It showed the raw, brutal side of addiction, the constant fight to stay clean, the crushing weight of relapse, and the kind of resistance that breaks you down before it builds you back up. There was no pretending recovery was simple. It wasn't. And for a brief, shining moment, Nick Reiner seemed to find solid ground again. During that project, something changed. He was showing up, on time, focused, and driven. He worked side by side with his father, and for the first time in years, there was structure in his life. People close to the Reiner family saw it immediately. Nick had direction again. The chaos that once followed him everywhere seemed to fade, replaced by discipline and purpose. It was the closest thing to peace his family had seen in a long time. For Rob and Michelle, it must have felt like a miracle. After so many years of worry and heartbreak, they finally saw a glimpse of the sun they'd been fighting to bring back. There was light breaking through the darkness, a sense that maybe, just maybe, Nick was turning the corner at last. But that calm didn't last. Not for long. Before anyone could catch their breath, Nick relapsed again, and everything he'd built began to fall apart piece by piece. The same destructive cycle came roaring back. Instability, distance, and unpredictability. Each relapse seemed heavier, more brutal, draining not only Nick's strength, but also the emotional endurance of everyone around him. By the years leading up to the heartbreaking events, that pattern had become impossible to ignore. The family's concern kept growing because the relapses were happening faster, and each one felt more dangerous than the last. What once seemed manageable with rehab and time had turned into something volatile, something unpredictable, something that scared even those who loved him most. Still, Rob and Michelle Reiner never walked away. They stayed. They kept offering love, guidance, and endless patience. But love doesn't cancel out fear, and according to people close to the family, that fear had become very real. They weren't just worried about Nick's future anymore. They were quietly beginning to worry about their own safety, too. That emotional distance Nick had spoken about years earlier, the gap between father and son, never really healed. Instead, it grew heavier with time. It wasn't an excuse, but it revealed the complicated truth behind their relationship, a mix of love and guilt, hope and heartbreak, devotion and exhaustion. Rob wanted to save his son, but he also carried the weight of wondering if he somehow couldn't. By the time that Christmas party came around, all that tension had been simmering for years. The argument that erupted that night wasn't random. It was the explosion of everything the family had been holding in for too long. Decades of addiction, recovery, relapse, reconciliation, and heartbreak had all collided in one tragic moment. Every decision, every boundary, every strained conversation, they were all part of the same long, painful battle that had shaped the Reiner family's life for decades. Long before that final night, the cracks were already there, quietly weaving through their story. As the years passed, Nick Reiner's deep sense of disconnection, the one he had first described as a child, never really left him. It followed him into adulthood, entangled with his struggles, his instability, and his ongoing fight to stay clean. That emotional distance never healed. It lingered, shaping every friendship, every relationship, and every attempt Nick made to rebuild himself. Even in the years leading up to the tragedy, that invisible wall remained between him and the people trying to reach him. It was the quiet part of the story, the wound no one could see, but everyone felt. Then came the unimaginable, the heartbreaking loss of Rob and Michelle Reiner. In the days that followed, the world waited to hear from the family. When the silence finally broke, it came through a joint statement from their surviving children, Romy Reiner and Jake Reiner, and it stopped everyone cold. Their words didn't sound like a press release or legal statement. There was no talk of charges, investigations, or speculation. It was pure emotion, grief, love, and disbelief poured straight from the heart. They described the loss as devastating, something that words could barely touch. They didn't focus on Rob and Michelle as Hollywood legends or public figures. They spoke about them as parents, the heart of their family, the emotional anchors who had held everything together for so long. The statement was raw, heartfelt, and painfully human, a reminder that behind the headlines and courtroom drama was a family utterly shattered in ways the public could never truly understand. It wasn't about fame or legacy or industry shock. It was about a family mourning two people who had been their light. Romy and Jake's message also took a moment to acknowledge the incredible outpouring of love that had come flooding in from across the country. And even around the world, friends, fellow artists, longtime colleagues, and complete strangers all reached out, sharing stories, memories, and messages of support. Letters poured in, social media filled with tributes, and candlelight vigils were held by fans who had grown up on Rob's work. But even in the middle of that tidal wave of compassion, the Reiner family made one quiet, powerful request: privacy. They needed time and space to process the unbearable loss, to grieve without the cameras, without the endless questions, and without the constant noise of speculation still swirling around them. Since that emotional statement, the family has chosen silence. No interviews, no public appearances, no follow-up messages. It wasn't about hiding, it was about surviving, about holding on to what little peace they could find in the middle of chaos. They stepped away from the spotlight entirely, letting the legal process unfold on its own while they grieved behind closed doors. Weeks later, a private memorial was quietly held for Rob and Michelle Reiner. No media coverage, no red carpets, just a deeply personal gathering of the people who truly knew and loved them. The ceremony was intimate, attended only by close family, lifelong friends, and a few trusted colleagues from Rob's legendary Hollywood career. There were no photographers, no press statements, just memories, stories, and tears. People spoke about Rob's laughter, Michelle's warmth, the kindness they carried, and the love they gave so freely. It was a celebration of two lives that had touched countless others, but most of all, it was a farewell shared by those who knew them not as icons, but as family. There were no cameras, no live streams, no statements for the press, nothing. The memorial for Rob and Michelle Reiner unfolded quietly, far from flashing lights or media headlines. Attendees later described it as heartfelt and deeply human, a gathering focused entirely on love and remembrance, not on fame or career accolades. This wasn't about Hollywood glory or awards. It was about connection, memory, and goodbye. Those who were there said the atmosphere felt soft and reflective, filled with quiet tears, gentle laughter, and stories shared in whispers. The people in that room weren't honoring movie icons. They were honoring Rob and Michelle, the people. Parents, friends, mentors, the souls behind the spotlights. Meanwhile, outside those walls, Hollywood was grieving hard. Across the industry, an outpouring of love and respect swept through social media, interviews, and tributes. Actors, filmmakers, and longtime collaborators shared heartfelt memories of the man who had shaped so many lives and careers. Kathy Bates, who worked with Rob early in her career, spoke warmly about his steady guidance and the deep trust he built on set. She called him the kind of director who made you feel safe enough to take risks. Kate Hudson reflected on his influence across generations of artists, crediting him with shaping how so many understood storytelling itself. Then there was Nick Robinson, one of the newer faces Rob had mentored later in his career. He remembered Rob as someone generous with advice, encouragement, and real kindness. A mentor who didn't just teach filmmaking, but taught how to lead with empathy. Each tribute carried its own tone and voice, but they all echoed the same powerful truth. Rob Reiner was a steady hand, a thoughtful leader, and a creative force who made everyone around him better. Many in the industry praised his rare ability to move seamlessly between genres, comedy, drama, romance, social commentary, without ever losing that emotional clarity or unmistakable warmth that made his work timeless. As Hollywood looked back on his decades-long career, one thing became undeniable. Rob Reiner's legacy wasn't built only on the movies he made, but on the people he touched along the way. His storytelling wasn't about explosions or flashy effects. It was about people, about love, fear, hope, and humanity. He had a way of pulling audiences in, not by shouting, but by speaking directly to the heart. His films weren't loud, they were lasting. When the world revisited his work, they found classics that still hit just as hard today as they did decades ago. The Princess Bride remains a timeless treasure, beloved across generations for blending humor, sincerity, and adventure with that perfect dash of fairy tale wonder. Stand By. Me continues to be praised as one of the most honest, emotional portrayals of friendship and growing up ever put on film, a story that captured the ache of childhood and the bittersweet pull of memory. And then there's When Harry Met Sally, the film that redefined romantic comedies forever. Not through cliches, but through real human conversation that audiences still quote word for word today. Critics and colleagues alike agreed. Rob Reiner's impact wasn't about numbers or box office totals. It was about truth. His movies carried something rare, a pulse, a heart, a piece of humanity that stayed with you long after the credits rolled. Rob Reiner wasn't just respected for the films he made. He was admired for the way he made them. He was known for his consistency, care, and absolute dedication on set. Rob showed up every single day, completely prepared, trusting his actors, and creating an atmosphere where everyone felt grounded, focused, and ready to bring their best. His movies never relied on cheap shock value or over-the-top spectacle. Instead, they found power in authentic emotion and real human stories. Every scene he crafted came from truth, the kind that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Alongside Rob's legendary career, Michelle Singer Reiner was also remembered with deep admiration. Though she preferred to live outside the spotlight, she played an essential role in the family's life and legacy. Michelle dedicated herself to philanthropy, family, and quiet strength, the kind that kept everything in balance when life got turbulent. Those who knew Rob and Michelle best described them as true partners, walking through decades of love, parenting, and purpose side by side. They weren't just a Hollywood couple, they were a real team. And that partnership became the foundation that held everything together, even when the storms began to hit. But as heartfelt tributes continued pouring in from across the entertainment world, one truth grew harder to ignore: the heartbreaking contrast between Rob's public legacy and the private tragedy that now shadowed his family. The same Hollywood community that celebrated his art was now watching in disbelief as the legal case tied to the Reiner's name continued to unfold. There was no clean divide between those worlds anymore. Grief, legacy, and tragedy had all collided, becoming one painful, intertwined story that no one could look away from. Public remembrance and private heartbreak now existed side by side. On one hand, Hollywood shared glowing tributes, interviews, and stories of laughter from Rob's sets. On the other, the Reiner family was still deep in mourning, quietly enduring a painful legal storm that refused to fade. These two worlds, celebration and sorrow, moved in parallel, rarely crossing, yet impossible to separate completely. Every headline about the trial sat right next to a post honoring Rob's timeless influence. Every courtroom update echoed through the same industry that was still grieving him. As the legal process continued behind closed doors, the tributes and memorials stood as quiet reminders of what this story was really about: real people. Not just famous names on a marquee, but parents, partners, and friends who had touched countless lives. Their absence still hangs heavy over the film industry, their community, and the hearts of everyone who knew them. Even long after the media buzz dies down and the courtroom lights fade, that loss remains painfully real. It's the kind of heartbreak that time doesn't easily fix, one that keeps echoing through the very places they once filled with life, laughter, and creativity. So now the question turns to you. What do you think really happened inside that home? Do you believe Nick Reiner is truly responsible for what unfolded? Or could there be more to this story than meets the eye? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. We want to hear your take. And if you found this story as gripping as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into Hollywood's most shocking and emotional sagas. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and check out the next video on your screen for even more wild twists, untold stories, and behind-the-scenes revelations from the world where fame and tragedy collide.